Welcome back to the Metabolic Revolution podcast. I'm Dr. Steve Prosciutti, and I am so excited to be here with you today. Last week, we blew your minds. We talked about how food is code, how every bite you eat sends instructions to your genes through methyl donors and epigenetic signals. You learned that breakfast literally programs your DNA, that folate and B12 and choline aren't just nutrients, they're chemical programmers. And the response was incredible. So many of you reached out saying this changed everything, that for the first time you understood how nutrition actually works at the genetic level. Not just eat healthy, but the mechanism, the actual biochemical pathways. But here's what I noticed in your messages. A lot of you were still thinking inside a box. You were thinking, okay, food is code, so if I eat the right foods, I've covered epigenetics. And I get why you'd think that. We've been taught to compartmentalize. Diet is one box, exercise is another, sleep is a third. Environment is somewhere on the periphery. But here's the thing, and this is important. Your environment is also code. The light hitting your retina right now, that's code. The temperature of your skin, that's code. The invisible electromagnetic waves pulsing through your space, that's code too. Every second of every day, your environment is sending signals to your genes, turning pathways on, turning pathways off, reprogramming your genetic expression in real time. And here's what most people, even functional medicine practitioners, completely miss. Environmental signals can be more powerful than food for epigenetic regulation. Think about that. You can eat the perfect diet, take all the right supplements, but if your environment is writing the wrong code, you're fighting a losing battle. This is week 3 of our 6-week epigenetics deep dive. We started in week 1 by establishing that genes aren't destiny. Epigenetics is the software running on your DNA hardware. Week 2, we talked about food as code, how nutrients rewrite your genes. Today, we're going broader. We're talking about environment as code. Because here's the truth. Your genes don't care what you eat half as much as they care about where you are. Your DNA is ancient. It evolved in a very specific environment: sunlight, natural temperature cycles, no artificial light, no electromagnetic fields, the natural world. When you place ancient genes in a modern environment, artificial light 24/7, temperature controlled to 72 degrees, EMF everywhere, you create a massive mismatch. Your genes are confused. They're getting signals they never evolved to process. And the result? Gene expression goes haywire. Inflammatory genes turned on, protective genes turned off. Detoxification pathways suppressed, repair mechanisms disabled. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how this happens, the mechanism, the pathways. We're going to talk about how light hitting your eyes literally changes which genes are active, why temperature isn't about comfort, it's an epigenetic signal, what heat shock proteins are and why they're critical for longevity, how intentional and intense cold exposure is counterproductive to health, despite what all the biohackers are telling you right now, why EMF might be the most overlooked epigenetic disruptor of our time, and most importantly, specific protocols to hack your environment for optimal gene expression. This is the information mainstream medicine completely ignores. Because once you understand that environment is code, once you understand that you can reprogram your genetic expression by changing your surroundings, their entire narrative falls apart. They want you to think it's all genetics, that you're a victim of your DNA, that environment doesn't matter. Just take this pill for whatever symptom you have. But that's a lie, a convenient, profitable lie. You have control. Your environment is code. And today, I'm going to teach you how to write better code. This is the Metabolic Revolution podcast from BioSpark Health. I'm Dr. Steve Prosciutti, and today we're talking about how your environment rewrites your genes. Let's dive in. So let's start with the most obvious and most powerful environmental signal, light. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Dr. Steve, we did an episode on light, episode 22. You talked about circadian rhythm and metabolism. And yes, we did. But today we're going deeper. We're talking about the mechanism, how light actually changes gene expression at the epigenetic level. Because here's the thing, light isn't just affecting your sleep cycle. Light is directly programming your genes through your epigenome. Let me explain how this works. When light enters your eyes, it hits your retina. Specialized cells called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, or ipRGCs, contain a light-sensitive protein called melanopsin. These cells respond to blue light in particular, and when they're stimulated, they send a signal directly to a part of your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, your master circadian clock. But here's what most people don't understand. Your circadian clock isn't just about sleep. Your circadian clock is a gene expression system. You have genes called clock genes. There's clock, BML1, PER, CRY, and ROR. These genes form feedback loops that turn genes on and off in a 24-hour rhythm. And here's the key. These clock genes are themselves epigenetically regulated by light. When blue light hits your retina at the right time, morning sunlight, it triggers a cascade. 1. Melanopsin activation in ipRGCs, which signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This then activates of clock BMAL1 complex. This complex then binds to DNA at specific sites called e-boxes, which activates hundreds of downstream genes, including genes for DNA methylation and histone modification. So morning sunlight literally activates the epigenetic machinery that allows your genes to respond properly to environmental signals. But when blue light hits your retina at the wrong time, artificial light at night, the opposite happens. Same melanopsin activation, but now it's dark outside, so your brain gets confused. Clock genes become dysregulated. The entire epigenetic rhythm falls out of sync. What does that mean? Well, genes that should be on at night get suppressed, and genes that should be off at night get activated. This is why night shift workers have dramatically higher cancer rates. Their epigenetic rhythms are completely disrupted. But it goes deeper than circadian rhythm. Red and near-infrared light, found in sunlight, directly activates mitochondrial genes. You have a specific pathway called the photoneuroendocrine system. When red and near-infrared light hit your skin, they penetrate deeply, up to several centimeters. They reach your mitochondria, the energy powerhouses of your cells. Inside your mitochondria, there are light-sensitive compounds called cytochrome C oxidase. When red light hits these compounds, it triggers something called the mitochondrial retrograde signaling pathway. Here's what happens. Red light stimulates cytochrome C oxidase. This increases mitochondrial membrane potential, which results in ATP production increasing and reactive oxygen species decreasing. This then results in a signal being sent from mitochondria back to the nucleus. This signal then activates transcription factors like PGC1 alpha and NRF2. And what does that do? Well, these transcription factors activate genes for mitochondrial biogenesis, which is your body literally making new mitochondria, as well as genes for antioxidant defense and genes for DNA repair. That's right, red light literally activates genes that protect and repair your DNA. This is called photobiomodulation, and the research is incredible. Studies show red light therapy activates genes for collagen production, which is important for skin health. It also upregulates genes for anti-inflammatory cytokines and increases the expression of DNA repair enzymes. If that's not enough, red light also activates telomerase, the enzyme that protects telomeres. And last but certainly not least, it's also been shown to enhance the expression of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. In fact, one study published in Photobiomodulation, Photomedicine, and Laser Surgery showed that just one session of red light therapy changed the expression of over 300 genes in human skin cells. And these weren't random genes. They were genes involved in things like wound healing, collagen synthesis, anti-inflammatory pathways, antioxidant defense, and DNA repair. This is why red light therapy is so effective for skin rejuvenation, wound healing, and even cognitive function. It's not just energy, It's epigenetic programming. But here's what most people miss. You can't supplement your way out of light deprivation. You can take all the methyl donors in the world, but if you're not getting morning sunlight in your eyes, you're not activating the epigenetic machinery that makes those methyl donors work. You can take all the mitochondria support supplements, but if you're not getting red and near-infrared light on your body, you're not activating the genes that actually build new mitochondria. Light is a required signal for proper epigenetic function, not optional. Now let me talk about something most people completely overlook. Blue light from screens is epigenetic toxin. When you stare at a phone or computer at night, you're flooding your eyes with blue light. This blue light does a number of things you really don't want to be happening. For starters, it suppresses melatonin production, and melatonin is a powerful epigenetic regulator. More on this in a future episode. It also dysregulates clock genes and increases expression of inflammatory genes like NF-kappa B. It's also known to suppress the expression of powerful antioxidant genes like SOD and glutathione peroxidase. One study from Harvard showed that just one night of light exposure during sleep altered gene expression in over 700 genes. Genes involved in circadian rhythm, inflammation, stress response, DNA repair, and metabolism. And here's the crazy thing. These changes happened after just one night. Imagine what happens after years of artificial light at night. This is why I'm so aggressive with my patients about a number of really important habits. 1. Morning sunlight within 30 minutes of waking. 2. No artificial light for 2 to 3 hours before bed. 3. Red light therapy or regular sunlight exposure daily. 4. Blue light blocking glasses at night. And 5. Complete darkness during sleep. These aren't just sleep hygiene recommendations. These are epigenetic interventions that help your cells have healthy gene expression versus pathologic gene expression across your entire body. You're programming your genes with light every single day. And here's the beautiful thing. Light is free. Sunlight costs nothing, but it's arguably the most powerful epigenetic signal there is. Now let's move to our second environmental epigenetic trigger, one that's completely overlooked in modern life. So we've talked about light. Now let's talk about temperature. And I need you to shift your thinking here, because most of us view temperature as a comfort issue. Too cold? Put on a sweater. Too hot? Turn up the AC. We keep our homes at 72 degrees year-round. We shower in water that's the same temperature every day. We never experience thermal variation. But here's what you need to understand. Temperature is not a comfort issue. Temperature is an epigenetic signal. Your genes evolved expecting thermal variation. Hot in a day, cold at night. Summer heat, winter cold. These temperature swings were daily signals to your epigenome. And when you eliminate those signals, you create epigenetic confusion. Let me break this down into two parts, heat and cold, because they trigger different epigenetic pathways. First, heat shock proteins. When your body temperature rises through exercise, sauna, hot bath, or environmental heat, something incredible happens at the genetic level. You activate genes for what are called heat shock proteins. Heat shock proteins, or HSPs, are a family of proteins that act as molecular chaperones. They help other proteins fold properly. They prevent protein damage. They help repair damaged proteins. And here's the key. Heat shock proteins are themselves epigenetic regulators. When you expose your body to heat stress, you activate a transcription factor called HSF1, heat shock factor 1. HSF1 binds to DNA at specific sites called heat shock elements. This activates genes for multiple heat shock proteins, HSP70, HSP90, HSP27, and others. But these heat shock proteins don't just protect proteins. They regulate DNA methylation. HSPs interact with DNA methyltransferases, influencing which genes get methylated. They also modulate histone modifications. They affect how histones are acetylated and methylated. HSPs also influence telomere length, as they help protect telomeres from degradation. And last but not least, they also reduce inflammation. HSPs suppress pro-inflammatory gene expression, This is why sauna use is so strongly associated with longevity. The Finnish Kuopio ischemic heart disease study followed over 2,300 men for 20 years. They found that men who used sauna 4 to 7 times per week had minus 50% lower risk of fatal heart disease, minus 40% lower risk of all-cause mortality, 66% lower risk of dementia, and significantly longer telomeres. And the crazy part, these effects are dose-dependent. More sauna equals more benefits. Why? Because sauna activates heat shock proteins, which program your genes for longevity. Heat also activates another crucial pathway, the FOXO pathway. FOXO transcription factors are like master switches for longevity genes. When activated by heat stress, FOXO does a number of really beneficial things, such as activating genes for antioxidant defense, like SOD and catalase, upregulating DNA repair genes, increasing the expression of autophagy genes, which helps with cellular cleanup, and enhancing genes associated with stress resistance. This is why hormetic stressors like sauna are so powerful. They activate epigenetic pathways that build resilience at the genetic level. Now let's talk about cold. And here I need to give you a truth that contradicts what you're hearing everywhere else. The biohacking world is obsessed with cold exposure. Cold plunges, ice baths, cryotherapy. They'll tell you it activates brown fat. They'll tell you it increases dopamine. They'll tell you it's hormetic stress that makes you stronger. Here's what they're not telling you. Cold exposure is primarily a stressor, and stress is not the path to optimal health. Let me explain something crucial that gets lost in the hormesis conversation. Hans Selye, the father of stress research, identified that every stressor has 2 types of effects. 1. Stressor effects: the damage, the energy depletion, the oxidative stress. 2. Specific effects: the unique benefits that particular stressor provides. Exercise is a great example. The stressor effects are real: muscle damage, inflammation, oxidative stress. But the specific effects are tremendous: lymphatic flow, circulation, muscle growth, neurological adaptation. The specific effects outweigh the stressor effects. That's why exercise is beneficial. Now let's look at cold exposure. What are the specific effects? You get better at tolerating cold. That's it. That's the main benefit. You become more cold tolerant. That's not nothing if you're a polar explorer, but for the rest of us, it's not much. And what are the stressor effects of cold? They're significant. For starters, you get massive activation of stress hormones like glucagon, adrenaline, and cortisol. This results in increased energy expenditure, but through metabolic inefficiency. In essence, it activates the same pathways activated by widely recognized toxins like mercury, cigarette smoke, and endotoxin. That's not something you want to be doing, particularly on a regular basis. When you plunge into ice water, your body doesn't think, "Oh, this is good for me." It thinks you're in a life-threatening situation. It activates the same emergency pathways that get activated by famine, trauma, and toxicity. Sure, you feel a dopamine surge afterward. You feel alert. You feel alive. But that's a stress response. It's the same dopamine hit you get from caffeine. It feels good because your body is mobilizing energy to survive. But here's what the biohackers miss. Your body can't tell the difference between good stress and bad stress. It just knows stress. And stress hormones have the same effects whether they come from an ice bath or from running from a predator. Let me break down what's really happening with cold exposure. Cold activates the AMPK pathway. AMPK is activated when there's a lack of ATP, when cells are energy deprived. It's a backup pathway. It's not an optimization pathway. It's a "we're running out of energy" signal. Cold activates the NRF2 pathway. This is an antioxidant pathway that gets turned on when there's oxidative stress. You're creating oxidative stress and your body is responding. That's not health optimization. That's damage control. Cold increases norepinephrine and dopamine, great in the short term. But chronic elevation, that's sympathetic nervous system overdrive. That's the pathway to burnout. Now, what about brown fat? What about UCP1? What about all those studies showing cold activates fat-burning genes? Here's the thing. Yes, cold exposure does activate brown fat. It does increase UCP1. It does increase calorie burning. But at what cost? You're forcing your body to burn fuel inefficiently to generate heat. That's not metabolic optimization. That's metabolic desperation. Your body is like a car running rich, burning extra fuel because something's wrong. And here's what the studies don't measure: the long-term effects of chronically elevated stress hormones, the cumulative damage to your thyroid, the progressive slowing of your metabolic rate, the eventual exhaustion that comes from treating your body like an enemy to be conquered. I've seen the patterns in my practice. People who've been doing cold plunges for years, initially they feel great, more energy, better mood. They're convinced it's changing their life. But then, the crash. Sleep starts deteriorating. Body temperature drops. Thyroid markers decline. Reproductive hormones suffer. And energy becomes erratic instead of steady. Why does this happen? Because their body is saying, this stress isn't sustainable. I need to slow down. I need to conserve resources. This is exactly what we see with low-carb diets, with fasting, with excessive exercise. Short-term benefits from stress hormone surges. Long-term costs from chronic activation of survival pathways. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying never be cold. I'm not saying you should live in a temperature-controlled bubble. What I am saying is stop treating cold exposure like a therapy. Stop treating it like a biohack. Stop forcing your body into a stress state and calling it health optimization. Your body wants to be warm. Your enzymes function best at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Your thyroid works best when you're comfortably warm. Your cells produce energy most efficiently when they're not fighting to stay alive. This is the bioenergetic perspective that mainstream and even alternative health completely miss. Comfort isn't laziness. Comfort is the foundation of optimal metabolic function. When your body feels safe, when it's warm and well-fed, it doesn't need stress hormones. It can invest in repair, reproduction, and optimal function. When you're constantly stressing your body with cold, with fasting, with exercise deprivation, you're telling it the environment is hostile. Conserve energy, slow down, survive. That's not the message you want to send your genes. So what should you do instead? The problem with modern life isn't that we need more cold stress. The problem is we're missing the signals that actually support optimal metabolism. Let me be clear about what I recommend. 1. Sauna or heat therapy 2 to 3 times per week, 20 to 30 minutes at 160 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. This activates heat shock proteins and longevity pathways without the stress hormone overload of cold. 2. Stay comfortably warm during the day. Dress appropriately. Keep your home at a temperature that feels comfortable, not one that challenges your metabolism. 3. Exercise, which raises body temperature and activates heat shock proteins naturally through movement rather than artificial stress. These aren't just health tips. These are metabolic supports. You're programming your genes with temperature signals that say, you are safe, you have enough energy, you can thrive. Your ancestors didn't have thermostats, but they also didn't voluntarily plunge into ice water. They sought warmth, they built fires, they wore clothing, they understood what every mammal understands. Warmth is the foundation of life. When you're warm and well-fed, your body can invest in things like proper thyroid function, optimal hormone production, efficient energy generation, and tissue repair and regeneration. Basically all the things that make health possible. Heat can be therapeutic. Cold is primarily stress, and stress is not the path to optimal health. Now let's move to the third environmental epigenetic trigger, one that's invisible, insidious, and completely ignored by mainstream medicine. So we've covered light and temperature. Now let's talk about something completely different, something you can't see, feel, or taste. Something that's filling your space right now, penetrating your body, affecting every cell. Electromagnetic fields, EMFs. And I can already hear the pushback. Dr. Steve, EMF conspiracy theory. Next you'll tell me 5G causes COVID. But hear me out. Because the science on EMF and epigenetics is actually quite clear, and it's concerning. Let me explain the mechanism, how EMFs affect your genes at the epigenetic level. EMFs act on voltage-gated calcium channels, VGCCs. Your cells have channels called voltage-gated calcium channels. These channels open in response to electrical signals, allowing calcium to enter the cell. Calcium is a critical signaling molecule. It triggers all kinds of cellular processes. But like everything in biology, it's about balance. Too little calcium signaling equals problems. Too much calcium signaling equals bigger problems. EMFs, especially radio frequency radiation from cell phones, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 5G, abnormally activate these VGCCs. Here's what happens. EMF exposure activates VGCCs. This causes calcium to flood into the cell, which triggers something called the calcium cascade. Basically, excess calcium activates nitric oxide synthase, which increases nitric oxide. This is a big problem because excess nitric oxide reacts with superoxide to form peroxynitrite. And peroxynitrite is a powerful oxidant, one of the strongest and most damaging in the body. It damages DNA, proteins, and lipids. But here's what connects this to epigenetics. The calcium cascade triggers epigenetic dysregulation. Excess intracellular calcium does a number of things. For starters, it activates something called histone deacetylases, or HDACs, which suppress gene expression. This then increases DNA methyltransferase activity, causing aberrant methylation patterns. It also activates pro-inflammatory transcription factors like NF-kappa B. And lastly, it suppresses antioxidant gene expression. This is why EMF exposure has been linked to things like increased cancer risk, neurodegenerative diseases, infertility, DNA damage, oxidative stress, and inflammation. These aren't just random associations. There's a mechanism behind all of this. And again, it's the calcium cascade leading to epigenetic dysregulation. For example, one study published in Environmental Research looked at workers exposed to high levels of EMFs. They found altered DNA methylation patterns in over 1,000 genes. That's right, 1,000 genes. They found hypomethylation of oncogenes, which means that cancer-promoting genes were turned on, as well as hypermethylation of tumor suppressor genes. They also found changes in genes related to DNA repair and cell cycle control. So in all, these epigenetic changes were consistent with increased cancer risk. Another study from the Yale School of Public Health found that prenatal exposure to EMFs was associated with epigenetic changes in genes related to brain development in newborns. This is why I'm so aggressive with my patients about EMF reduction. 1. Keep your phone away from your body. Don't carry it in your pocket. Don't sleep with it near your bed. Use speakerphone or headphones for calls. 2. Turn off Wi-Fi at night. Your router doesn't need to be on while you sleep. Plug it into a simple timer so it turns off automatically at bedtime. 3. Wireless earbuds, AirPods, Galaxy Buds, etc. These are Bluetooth transmitters sitting in your ear, right next to your brain. Use wired headphones when possible. 4. 5G and smart meters. These are higher frequency, higher intensity exposures. If you have a smart meter, see if you can opt out. Be aware of 5G tower locations near your home. 5. Grounding. Spending time barefoot on the earth helps discharge accumulated electrical charge and may counteract some EMF effects. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying technology is evil. I use a cell phone. I have Wi-Fi. I'm not telling you to move to a cabin in the woods. But I am saying that EMFs are an epigenetic stressor. They affect your gene expression, and the more exposure you have, the bigger the effect. The goal isn't zero EMF exposure. That's not realistic in modern life. The goal is reducing exposure where possible and mitigating effects where you can't. Because here's the thing. You can eat a perfect diet. You can take all the right supplements. You can get perfect light exposure and temperature variation. But if you're bathing in EMFs 24/7, you're still going to have epigenetic dysregulation. Your environment is code, and EMFs are writing code you don't want written. Now, let's tie this all together and talk about protocols. So we've covered a lot today. Light, temperature, EMFs, 3 environmental epigenetic triggers that are affecting your gene expression every single day. Now let's talk about what to actually do with all this information. I want to give you practical things you can start doing right now, things that will reprogram your genes through your environment. Let's start with the morning routine, because how you start your day sets the epigenetic tone for everything that follows. First thing, and I mean literally first thing, you need to get outside. Within 30 minutes of waking, step out your front door. No sunglasses. If you wear glasses, try to let some light in around the frames. And if you can go barefoot, even better. There's a grounding effect that we're still learning about. You want that sunlight hitting your retina. Not staring at the sun, don't do that, but just being outside, letting the natural light enter your eyes. If it's cloudy, stay out longer. The clouds filter UV, but you still get that crucial blue light signal that tells your brain it's morning. Here's what's happening when you do this. That light hits specialized cells in your retina called ipRGCs. They send a signal to your suprachiasmatic nucleus, that's your master circadian clock. This activates something called the clock BMAL1 complex, which then activates hundreds of downstream genes, including the genes for DNA methylation and histone modification. Morning sunlight literally turns on the epigenetic machinery that allows your genes to respond properly to signals all day long. It also sets your cortisol rhythm. Cortisol gets a bad reputation, but cortisol should be highest in the morning. That's normal. That's healthy. And when it peaks properly in the morning, it can drop properly at night, allowing melatonin to rise. Now, what if you can't get outside? Maybe you live in a place where the sun doesn't really come out in winter, or maybe you have to be at work before dawn. Open all your windows. Let whatever natural light is available flood your home. You can get a light therapy lamp, 10,000 lux, and use that for 20 to 30 minutes in the morning. It's not as good as sunlight, but it's better than nothing. Next up, red light therapy, or more sunlight, or both. Red and near-infrared light are found naturally in sunlight, and they do something incredible. They penetrate deep into your tissues, reaching your mitochondria. Inside your mitochondria, there are light-sensitive compounds called cytochrome C oxidase. When red light hits these, it triggers a signal from your mitochondria back to the nucleus. That signal activates genes for mitochondrial biogenesis, making new mitochondria. Genes for antioxidant defense. Genes for DNA repair. Genes for collagen production. Red light literally activates genes that protect and repair your DNA. You can get a red light therapy device. You want one that does 660 nanometers, that's red, and 850 nanometers, that's near infrared. Use it daily if you can, 10 or 20 minutes. Position it about 6 to 12 inches from your skin and expose large areas, your abdomen, your chest, your back. Or, and this is the free option, just get more sunlight. 20 or 30 minutes of direct sunlight on exposed skin gives you the full spectrum of red and near infrared light, and it costs nothing. Now let's talk about heat. Sauna specifically. I want you doing sauna 2 or 3 times per week minimum, 4 or 5 times if you really want maximum benefits. 20 to 30 minutes per session. If you're using a traditional sauna, that's 160 to 180 degrees. If it's infrared, 100 to 110 degrees. What does this do? It activates heat shock factor 1, HSF1, which then activates heat shock proteins. These are molecular chaperones that help proteins fold properly. But they're also epigenetic regulators. Heat shock proteins interact with DNA methyltransferases. They affect histone modifications. They protect your telomeres. They suppress pro-inflammatory gene expression. Heat also activates the FOXO pathway. FOXO transcription factors are like master switches for longevity genes. They activate genes for antioxidant defense, DNA repair, autophagy, that's cellular cleanup, stress resistance genes. This is why sauna use is so strongly associated with longevity. The Finnish study I mentioned earlier, over 2,300 men followed for 20 years, found that men who used sauna 4 to 7 times per week had 50% lower risk of fatal heart disease, 40% lower risk of dying from all causes, 66% lower risk of dementia, and significantly longer telomeres. Don't have access to a sauna? A hot bath works too. 102 to 104 degrees for 30 minutes. Add some Epsom salts if you want. Or just exercise intensely in a warm environment. That raises your body temperature and activates heat shock proteins naturally. Now here's one that might surprise you coming from me. Keep your bedroom warm at night, around 70 to 72 degrees. I know a lot of people recommend sleeping in a cold room, but here's the thing. Your body temperature naturally drops during sleep. You don't need to force it down further with a cold bedroom. Warm sleep supports deeper rest and recovery. And during the day, stay comfortably warm. Dress for warmth, not for fashion. Keep your home at a temperature that feels comfortable to you. Why am I emphasizing this? Because your enzymes function best at 98.6 degrees. Your thyroid works best when you're comfortably warm. Your cells produce energy most efficiently when they're not fighting to stay alive. Comfort isn't laziness. Comfort is the foundation of optimal metabolic function. And I need to be clear about something. Avoid cold exposure therapies. No ice baths, no cold plunges, no cold showers. I know they're popular in the biohacking world. I know people swear by them. But from a bioenergetic perspective, cold is primarily a stressor. Your body can't tell the difference between good stress and bad stress. Cold exposure activates the same pathways as famine, trauma, and toxicity. You might feel a short-term dopamine hit, but chronic cold exposure leads to metabolic slowdown, thyroid suppression, and eventual exhaustion. If you enjoy swimming, do it in comfortably warm water. Keep your home at a temperature that feels good. Your ancestors sought warmth. They built fires, they wore clothing, they understood what every mammal understands. Warmth is the foundation of life. Now let's talk about EMF reduction. Keep your phone away from your body. Don't carry it in your pocket. Don't put it in your bra. When you're not using it, put it in airplane mode. For calls, use speakerphone or wired headphones. Keep it across the room from your bed at night, not on your nightstand. Turn off your Wi-Fi at night. Get a simple timer that plugs into the wall and automatically shuts off the router at bedtime. It doesn't need to be on while you're sleeping. Avoid wireless earbuds for long calls. AirPods, Galaxy Buds, these are Bluetooth transmitters sitting in your ear, right next to your brain. Use wired headphones when you can. Use wired internet connections when possible. Every wireless device you eliminate is one less source of EMF exposure. And consider grounding. Spending 10 or 15 minutes barefoot on the earth every day, grass, sand, dirt. This helps discharge accumulated electrical charge and may counteract some EMF effects. Here's what all of this does. EMFS overactivates something called voltage-gated calcium channels, VGCCS. This causes calcium to flood into your cells, triggering what's called the calcium cascade. Excess calcium inside your cells activates histone deacetylases, which suppress gene expression. It increases DNA methyltransferase activity, causing aberrant methylation patterns. It activates pro-inflammatory transcription factors. It suppresses antioxidant genes. Reducing your EMF exposure prevents this epigenetic dysregulation. It allows your body's natural electrical rhythms to normalize. Finally, the evening light routine. 2 to 3 hours before bed, turn off the screens. No phone, no computer, no TV. If you must use a screen, put on blue light blocking glasses. Use dim, warm lighting in your home. Red or orange light is ideal. And make your bedroom pitch black. Blackout curtains, no night lights. Cover up any LEDs from chargers or electronics. Your sleep environment should be so dark you can't see your hand in front of your face. This prevents circadian disruption. It allows natural melatonin production. It protects the epigenetic rhythms that are controlled by light and dark cycles. It ensures proper activation of repair genes during sleep. Now let me put this in perspective. These protocols might seem overwhelming, like a lot to add to your life, but here's what I want you to understand. Your genes are being programmed right now, whether you like it or not. Every single day, the light you're exposed to, the temperature of your environment, the EMFs filling your space, they're all writing code to your genes. The question isn't whether your environment is programming your genes. The question is what code is being written. You can be passive. Let your environment write whatever code it wants. Artificial light, temperature control, EMFs everywhere. Or you can be intentional. Design your environment to write the code you want. This is what we do at BioSpark. We help patients understand all the inputs that affect their gene expression, not just diet, not just supplements. Environment is code, and you have more control over your environment than you think. Start small. Pick one thing. Maybe it's morning light. Maybe it's turning off Wi-Fi at night. Maybe it's a weekly sauna session. Master one. Then add another. Because here's the beautiful thing. Your genes respond quickly. Epigenetic changes can happen in days, sometimes faster. You start getting morning sunlight. Within a week, your circadian genes are normalizing. Within 2 weeks, your epigenetic rhythms are falling into place. You start doing sauna. Within a few sessions, heat shock proteins are elevated. Within weeks, you're seeing gene expression changes. Your body wants to be healthy. Your genes want to express properly. They just need the right signals. And those signals, they're in your environment. So let's recap what we covered today. Week 1, we learned that genes aren't destiny. Epigenetics is the software running on your DNA hardware. Week 2, we talked about food as code, how nutrients rewrite your genes through methyl donors and epigenetic signals. This week, week 3, we expanded the frame. Your environment is also code, the light hitting your retina, directly programming which genes are active. The temperature of your skin. Heat supports longevity and repair. Cold creates stress and survival signaling. The invisible EMFs filling your space. Writing code you don't want written. Every second of every day, your environment is sending signals to your epigenome, turning genes on, turning genes off, reprogramming your genetic expression in real time. You can eat the perfect diet, take all the right supplements, but if your environment is writing the wrong code, you're fighting a losing battle. The good news, you have control. You can get morning sunlight. You can use red light therapy. You can do sauna. You can keep your body warm and comfortable. You can reduce EMF exposure. You can design your environment to write the code you want. Next week, week 4, we're going to talk about stress and cortisol as epigenetic signals. Because stress isn't just in your head. Stress hormones literally rewrite your genetic expression. In chronic stress, it's one of the most powerful epigenetic disruptors there is. You're not going to want to miss it. If this episode resonated with you, if you're starting to understand that environment is code and you want to know your personal epigenetic burden, the environmental factors that might be affecting your gene expression, we can help. We offer a comprehensive metabolic health assessment at biosparkhealth.com/assessment. We'll evaluate your environmental exposures, your lifestyle factors, your symptoms, and create a personalized protocol to optimize your genetic expression. Because here's the truth. Mainstream medicine will never tell you that environment is code. They'll tell you it's all genetics, that you're a victim of your DNA, that environmental factors don't matter. Just take this pill. But that's a lie. A convenient, profitable lie. You have control. Your environment is code. And you can learn to write better code. Remember, if you finally want to start to take control of your own health, you came to the right place. For now, have a great week, and I'll see you on the next episode. And please, remember to send this to anyone in your life who you think may benefit from this information.